Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Red Lucy podcast. My name is Lucy, and today I'm here with Nadia King. Nadia's award-winning short stories have been published in Australia and internationally. So, hello, Nadia, how are you?
Yeah, good. How are you? Thanks so much for having me on your podcast.
I'm good, thank you. So, we're going to start off with a bit of a quick fire round. So, just choose the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
Smart or casual?
Smart.
Fiction or non-fiction?
Fiction.
Reading or writing?
Oh, reading.
Left or right?
Right.
TV shows or movies?
Movies.
Night or day?
Night.
Sunset or sunrise?
Sunrise.
Rain or shine?
Rain.
Invisibility or flight?
Oh, that's a hard one. I'm going to have to think about it. I'll go flight.
Cafe or restaurant?
Cafe.
Sweet or savory?
Oh, both.
And last but not least, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Coffee.
And tea.
You did a good job. Good job. A lot of people take a while to think, but you are straight onto it. Okay. Now we're going to get into a bit of the longer questions.
Okay.
I find writing short stories really difficult, but I know you've won awards for writing them. What's your process of writing a short story, and how does it differ from a longer piece?
Okay. I actually find writing long form really difficult. But short stories, my process, I guess, is coming up with something and then trying to make that into a short story, which means that you don't want to say too much, but it has to be enough to be a story. So I actually think it's quite tricky to do. I've been reading lots of like the Russian short story writers like Chekhov and all those old writers, and I even read this story by Hemingway the other day, and he just cut off so quickly, and I had to go back and read it. I had to read it a couple of times, and I think that's a real talent, knowing when to cut off so that the reader's like, oh, like, wow, what happened? And I think that's kind of the feel that you want to get with a short story, like, wow. And I don't think that you often get that with a book, because you read it for such a long period of time, you're enjoying it, each section. But I think at the end of a short story, it kind of feels like you've been thumped or something, or you've seen something that you shouldn't have seen. That's kind of how it feels to me. So, yeah, so I don't actually know how to write them. I just give it a good, yeah.
Yeah. And at Scribblers Festival, I watched you interview Jessica Townsend. It looked like you were having a lot of fun. Yeah, it was really good. So how was it? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I loved it. I loved Scribblers Festival. Jessica was great fun to interview. And I did quite a bit of, as I'm sure you do as well, I did quite a bit of prep before I interview anybody. And so the trick is you don't know which question the person is going to react to. And so I found like some of them, I thought she would run with, and she didn't. And so then it's just sort of being on your feet with what's the next, what's the next question. But it was a lot of fun. I loved it. It was, I got to spend, I think, like 4 days with Jessica Townsend. So I felt like we were besties at the end of it. Yeah. I don't know if she felt the same, but I was, we're besties.
Oh, that's awesome. I'd love to be besties with Jessica Townsend. So I know that you cover a lot of really important topics like suicide, bullying, and abuse in your books. How do you go about writing such heavy topics?
Oh, it's really difficult, actually. So for the book that's coming out, so it's coming out in the UK at the end of this month, but not till September in Australia. It's got a really long title. Can the Real JR Stand Up, Please? That's the title of the book. And in that book, I tackle family abuse. And I did quite a bit of research, just sort of on the computer and, books and things. I did quite a bit of research into it, which was really heavy. And then I spoke to a few people that had, like, I spoke to a psychologist, and I spoke to a couple of people that had experienced, some level of family abuse. And so then when it came to writing, like, I had to write a couple of really horrible scenes in that book, and I just found it really grueling. So I think writing anything difficult requires you to do some significant research. Like, you really want to have a good handle on the topic, and then you kind of want to talk to someone who's experienced it, because researching and then somebody's experience are completely different. And interestingly, when I was writing that book, different people reacted to it differently, and they were like, oh, well, I don't think he should have done this, and then somebody else will go, well, he definitely did the right, he definitely reacted the way I would have thought. So it was really interesting, but I did find it very grueling. But I think, lots of research when you're covering those sorts of heavy topics.
Was it really tricky to write those particularly abusive scenes?
I found it really mentally draining. I was at Paperbird bookshop in Freo doing a fellowship when I did a lot of that writing, and I just remember one day I had like a full-on session. I don't know how many hours I had sat writing, and then I went to drive home, and I cried all the way home. Like, it was just, I found it really draining. So actually, I think that they are really, those heavy topics, they do hit you, and I think that's good, but also you kind of want to look after yourself at the same time.
So do you develop a really close connection with your characters to feel that emotionally attached to them when they go through hard stuff?
Yeah, I kind of have to. So I don't do like a lot of that plotting where, I kind of know where I'm going and how I kind of know where I'm starting and where I want to be, but I don't have it all planned out, like I don't have chapter outlines or anything like that. And so I tend to then focus really in on the character. And so that's what drives, like what the character does should be driving your plot forward. And so I kind of just stick with the character. And then as you can see, like, you want it all to cascade, but it all to come from the character's actions and behavior. So, yeah. I've forgotten that question. Was that? Did I answer you?
No, that's all good. Did you always want to be an author?
No, I really, when I was young, because I'm quite old now, but when I was young, the job that I really wanted to do was, I thought I would work in a factory. That's how old I am. And I really wanted to work. I thought, if I'm going to work in a factory, I'd like to work in a sweet factory. I'd like to work maybe with chocolates or something like that. So I never really wanted to be, and I didn't really want to be an author. I didn't think that was something that would be open to me. But I'm glad that I've had the opportunity. Yeah, I've had the opportunity to do it, which has been great. And it's way better than working in a factory.
Yes. So where did that passion for writing come from?
From reading. So I'm I was one of those kids that really struggled to learn to read. And I remember you'd have all the readers, they'd be in this colour coding, and I knew that I would never get to the purple books. Like, the purple books were the really hard ones. And I remember thinking, I'm forever going to be stuck down reading these yellow books. I'm never going to get to the purple books. And then one day I was incredibly bored, and it was like way before, devices, and Mum was like, you're not watching TV during the day. Not that there probably would have been anything on anyway. And I remember she used to buy me secondhand books, and so I had this bookcase full of books, and I was so bored, I went and pulled a book off the bookcase, and I loved it. Yeah. And that's where, so my love of reading then pushed me into writing. But I've only been writing creatively really for maybe like the last 5 years. So it was never something that, I was like, I'm going to be an author. It was never that. Yeah.
I love to write book reviews, and I can see that you do too. What's your number one tip for writing reviews?
Well, read the book.
Yeah.
Definitely read the book. I like to be honest, but I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings at the same time, unless they're dead. So I tend to, right, don't you reckon? Yeah. So I tend to, my number one tip would be, so maybe we shouldn't say all of that about writing any positive ones, because I mean, you're fairly within your rights to write a negative book review. I just wouldn't. Read the book and have a really good handle on what the book's about, but then just be completely honest about how you reacted to it in your gut. Because everybody reacts. I think everybody has their own reading of a book, so you don't have to be, because there's plenty of books where, you know, everyone will be like, oh, this is the best book, and then I'll pick it up and I'll be like, oh, I really didn't like this book. And then there'll be a book that's really obscure and I'll think, this is so good, why does everybody not read this book? So I think how you react is valid, and that should sort of form the basis for your book review.
Yeah, so like base it off your reaction.
Yeah, I think so. Do you agree?
Yeah, definitely, because then it's a bit more genuine, and it kind of comes rather than what everyone else says about it.
Yeah, that's what I reckon. And then sometimes what you pick up in a book will be completely different to what somebody else picks up. They just won't see that at all. So yeah, I definitely think it's how you react and your reading. And because your reading of a book is just as valid as anybody else's, right? Because reading is teamwork. So the writer's done their part, and then it's your job to make it come to life, because you're the one whose imagination, you know, like it's in your head, right? Or
and do you have any hobbies outside of writing?
Oh, I'm really boring. I have so I have a dog. So I spend a lot of time with my dog. I just like spending time with my family. So we do lots of family things, and I've got a daughter who is at university now, so we spend lots and lots of time together, and we're on the lookout. We're trying to find the perfect cafe at the moment. So that's what we do. So I guess that's kind of a hobby.
Cafe.
Finding the perfect cafe. Yeah, we combine it. We usually combine it with book shopping as well. So it's like the perfect outing.
What's the difference between writing a short story compared to a long story, like some of the novels you're going to publish? Is one trickier or harder, and where are the differences between those two writing processes?
Yeah, so the form. So I think the way to think about it is, in a novel, I mean, these are general rules and obviously things change all the time, but for a novel, you may be looking at a lifetime of a character, and maybe not one character. You know, the family sagas, you'd have generations. So you can cover a lot in a novel, and I think you need to. And you want all those elements to be very much alive. So, I mean, you do in short stories as well, but you have to be very particular with what you're showing in a short story. So in a novel, you get to see a lifetime. In a short story, you get to see a moment in somebody's life. So you don't get to see the whole life. It's almost like peeking through a window and just seeing almost a pivotal event in someone's life. That's what you see in a short story. You don't get to see what happened and what happened before and what happened after. And I think with a short story, you should be left with this sense of incompleteness.
Yeah.
That you know that I've just peeked in and seen this life, but that you have a sense that life is continuing, even though we're not privy to that.
Yeah.
So I think that's the main difference. Main differences in the form, and where you would have, say, a character arc or character development in a novel, you're not necessarily going to have that in a short story, because there's not, you know, you're so confined with your space that you don't. I can just hint at what a character might do, but then you may read that as a reader, you may think that something different has happened. So that story that I was talking about, Hemingway's story, is called Hills Like White Elephants. I think that's the correct title. And in that story, it sort of ends abruptly. And for donkey's years, everybody has been thinking that the story ended one particular way. And it was really only in the 1980s, when more feminist retellings became common, that people started reading that story in a completely different way.
Yeah.
And then when you go, like, it's just maybe one or two words that hint that maybe there has been a change in the character. you know, maybe there hasn't, so the man in the story, he moves their bags to the other side of the train station. So sort of what does that mean?
Yeah.
Does that mean that it's his mind or
Mm.
not? And so one word other. So in a novel, you can skip over words and you'll still get the meaning of the story. In a short story, if you skip over a word, you may miss the whole meaning of the story. And that's what I love about short stories.
Mm. So you can put like a lot of metaphorical secrets inside short stories.
Yeah, and I think you can hint. So you don't want to tell as much.
Mm.
You really want. I think with a novel, you can be taken along and you can be entertained and you can watch the story come. And I think in a short story, as a reader, you've got a lot more work. Like you've really got to pay attention. And I think the settings are, rather than just somewhere for a story to be played out, I think the settings will often in a short story hint at something else within the story, and even the title should hint or should give you some sort of indication. So I think there's every sort of little element in a short story really plays its part in a big way, and in a novel you can you've got more luxury to stretch out. And that's what I think. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think because you have so much space in a novel, like you said, you don't have, every word doesn't have to be full of meaning. Whereas with a short story, you have a much smaller space to send a message.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
They're really cool.
Yeah. So what have some of your short stories been about?
Okay, so this one short story, it's called Mariko's Mouse, and it won the Stuart Haddo was it last year? No, the year before. And it's about this little Japanese girl. So this Japanese family moved from Japan to Perth, and the story is really just about this one day in this little girl's life, even though you kind of, you have a little bit of background. So you know that she's come from Japan and that she's new and that the world is different for her. And in the story, she goes and plays tennis with her dad, and it's almost like a battle of wills in terms of it's really hot, and her dad's making her play tennis, and she really doesn't want to be playing tennis. And then that night, she sees a mouse on the balcony, and she thinks, this is great because this is going to be my friend in Australia. And then her dad gets the mouse and drowns it in a bucket of water.
Oh no.
And then, but what she does is she grows up in that moment, instead of being horrified by her father's actions, because her new friend is now dead, she's able to see through that and see what a good man her father actually is. So it's a short period of time, but yet you're able to see this like pivotal moment in this little girl's life where she moves from child towards adulthood, and she sees her father in a completely different light through an act of violence, which is kind of so it's kind of got this but so I've written there, because I don't write for children. When I write short stories, I write quite dark themes or adult themes. So so they're very different to my other work, though. I mean, Jenna's Truth has got cyberbullying and attempted suicide, and JR has got family abuse, but this is kind of they're more I feel like I'm poking the reader. I'm like prodding them to have a look. So I cover different topics.
And last but not least, you've spoken a bit about this, but could you tell us some more about your upcoming novel, Can the Real JR Stand Up, please?
Yes, so I don't have a book because it's not come yet, but I do have. That's what the cover looks like. It's not straight.
That's really cool.
So it's really cool. So the artwork is done by a girl called Nadia So, and she lives in Singapore, and she's an artist. So she's done the artwork. And the story is, I'll leave it back up for a few minutes, but if you have a look, so the main character is Jake. Am I pointing? So that's the main character. He's Jake. And then he has a dog, which you probably can't see, but the dog's actually doing yoga on his shoulder.
Yeah.
So that's the dog's a little bit unusual. And then this is his best friend, Fee, and she's half Indian, and she's just this amazing, like, awesome filmmaker. So the story is about Jake trying to escape his abusive family situation. So he lives with his mum and his dad and his dog, who's called Baba Ami. And Baba Ami is named after, like, an Indian guru, because his mum's got an Indian guru. So Baba Ami is full of wisdom, and the thing that makes her really unusual, apart from the fact that she does yoga, is that she speaks to Jake. So that's sort of the magical realism, and other things happen as well. But so Jake's in this awful situation. He's in the last year of high school, and he somehow has to survive. He's somehow got to work out how he can escape this home life that he's in a way that he's comfortable with, and sort of go and start his life. So the story is really about this last year of high school for Jake and all the challenges that he has. And I wrote my first fight scene while I was writing that book, and I thought, I was thinking, this isn't really my jam, I'm not really going to like doing this, but I was like, yeah, get that,
let's go,
kicking in. Yeah, it was like lots of fun to write, apart from those really horrible moments in the book. But otherwise, I really liked Jake, and I gave him sort of a, like, I'm slightly obsessed with Japan and Japanese literature and anime and manga, and so I kind of gave him those obsessions of mine. And in something funny for that book, there's a scene where he's actually in prison, in jail, at the local police station. He's in a jail cell, and I spent some time in a jail cell for my research, which was, like, bizarre.
Yeah. So you went into a jail cell to, like, find out kind of more of what he was feeling.
Yeah, and what it would, like, because I wasn't sure how you get arrested, and where you come in, like, where does the paddy wagon, where does it go in, and how do you get into the police station, and then how are you processed, and then, so once you're arrested, how do you get processed, and then what happens to you? So I was really interested in how that worked. And so then I just went up to my local police station and said, can I have a little look? Can I sit in the cell? Can I see where you're processed? And and the police, like, the sergeant, took me everywhere and let me sit in the little cell, and where I would be, where I'd be questioned.
Yeah.
So I was in the room where you're questioned. So all the description in the novel is, like, true to my local police station.
Yeah, well, that's really cool. And that is it. So thank you so much for joining me, Nadia.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, and thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a thumbs up and like and share to all your friends, and keep reading.